Connection established.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sir Mustafa. My name is Nur Zaharina binti Muhammad Zaid, Matrix number UDE 2075. And today I will start the presentation with the introduction. So, in December 2006, the Islamic Financial Services Board, or also known as the Ifsb, issued its guiding principles for corporate governance of institutions offering only Islamic Financial Services IIFS, which is also known as IFSB 3. So, the IFSB has decided that the term Islamic Collective Investment Scheme is more appropriate and will be used in the documents. So, the IFSB also recognizes that certain governance issues are of equal concern to all CIS, whether it's Islamic or not. Therefore, the IFSB has conducted its own survey on the ICIS, and they have found out that when they conducted the survey, they found that the findings are consistent with the other surveys conducted by the IOSCO on the CIS. So, what are the benefits of complying the Sharia? Number one, it reinforces good governance and integrity to the society, and it also influences the way our government or the governance structures and procedures implements. So, what are the objectives of IFSB 6? Alright, the purpose of this standard or this principle is to provide the opportunity to as many as possible students who intend to obtain Islamic sciences at university level. Okay. The second objective is to contribute in finding the highest international quality of Islamic research methodology. Thirdly is to reduce the cost of higher education study as much as possible, and lastly is to also promote intellectual debates and understanding of Islam and Muslims in the modern world, in the present world right now.
Assalamualaikum, Sir Mustafa. My name is Nur Fatih Munira binti Adu Alim. I will present the direction of IFSB 6. For direction of IFSB 6, an ICIS may take the 5 form of: first, open-ended fund that will redeem their unit or share whether on a continuous basis or periodically. Second, closed-end fund whether those unit or share are tradable. Third, a unit investment trust whether on a contractual model or that of a European UCITS model. Fourth, an individual fund or unumbrella fund that comprise various sub-funds. Lastly, a profit-sharing investment account which is pooled in the form of CIS and whereby each of the investment account holder, which is IAH, participate equally in income and is generally governed by in the same term and condition. There are 4 scopes of ICIS governance. First, the general goal is not to insulate investors from suffering any market-driven loss, but enable them to understand the risks pertaining to investment in the specific CIS. Second, they reduce the CIS investor exposure to any loss due to misleading, manipulative, and fraud practice, malfeasance or negligence on the part of the CIS insider. Third, indeed the Sharia itself clearly prohibits the abuse of position of privilege and promote integrity and fair dealing. And last but not least, CIS governs a framework for the organization and operation of CIS that ensure that CIS are organized and operate efficiently in the interest of CIS. So, under the direction of IFCBS 6, IOSCO recognized that CIS are typically organized under two sections, which is first, contractual model. Contractual model whereby the CIS as an investment fund only exists as a trust or contract between the operator and individual investor. Second, corporate model, which is corporate model whereby the CIS take the form of an investment company, legal registered as a corporation.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day to you, sir. My name is Nur Aina Nazira binti Muhammad Suhaimi, matrix number UDE 2077. So I will touch on main general principles on the first factor, which is general governance approach of ISIS. First and foremost, the ISIS highest governing body shall establish a comprehensive governance policy framework which protects the independence and integrity of each organization of governance and sets out mechanisms for proper control and management of conflicts of interest and duty. Structure and process, the nature of the relationship between ISIS insiders and ISIS investors is such that the existence of potential conflicts of interest and duty cannot be ruled out. So the GB shall strive for consistent improvement by establishing a comprehensive governance policy framework that actually protects the independence and integrity of each organizations of governance and sets out a mechanism for proper control over conflicts of interest. Next is recommended best practice. So ISIS GB shall establish the appropriate code of ethics and conduct to be complied with by its members. By adequate system in place to prior compliance with the code and ensure any misbehavior or misconduct is dealt with swiftly and effectively. Conflicts involving self-interest, direct or indirect, that could undermine the reputation of the ISIS and its fair dealing with investors require particular and careful attention. So it is necessary for a system to be developed to evaluate and monitor the level of conflicts of interest and to provide adequate guidance to determine whether an ISIS insider should be first strictly prohibited from subscribing to the ISIS. Number 2 is allowed to subscribe to the ISIS but must either disclose their subscription in the prospectus, hold on to their investment, which is prohibited from disposing for a specific length of time, and only dispose of their investment subject to prior disclosure of the transactions, interest, and with adequate time for ISIS investors or supervisor authority to object to such disposal. That's all for my part. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day to Sir Mustafa. So my name is Nur Alia Shahira binti Subri and my matrix number is UDE 2079. So now I will be in charge in explaining about the structure and process of transparency in disclosure of IFSB 6 and also its recommendation of best practice. ISIS insiders shall ensure that disclosure of material information is not only done with appropriate accuracy and timeliness, but also presented in investor-friendly manner. Although in practice, the ISIS investors shall not intervene in the management of the investment made on their behalf, it does not mean they should not have access to appropriate information in order to monitor the performance of the ISIS and protect their investment. Without adequate disclosure, it will be difficult for ISIS investors even to vote with their feet and simply withdraw their investment. It goes without saying that accuracy and timeliness of disclosure played a significant role in assuring market discipline and efficiency. In this respect, it is the duty of ISIS insider to present ISIS investors with information that appropriately reflects the investment profile of the ISIS as well as the associated risk. In particular, investors should, on a continual regular basis, be informed of any risk concentration to which the ISIS is exposed. Insiders must be fully aware of their legal responsibility in the provision of such information and ensure that it meets the requisite legal, regulatory and professional standard in terms of accuracy, topically, clarity and comprehensibility. Furthermore, effective and timely disclosure reduces the opportunity for certain forms of misconduct, market abuse, and in particular insider dealing. It follows that the methods of disclosure can be divided into three categories, which firstly, disclosure at the offering or promotional stage of the investment, which is a mixture of integrity and investment-related disclosure. Secondly, periodic and progressive disclosure, which takes the form of quarterly reports, semi-annual reports, and annual reports. And lastly, timely and continual disclosure that affects the governance evaluation of the ISIS. In addition, ISIS GB shall include in its disclosure to the supervisory authorities and the ISIS investor the status of its compliance. Effective and efficient, continuous and timely disclosure will not only empower ISIS investors to make informed investment decisions, but will also lend credibility and cost efficiency to the ISIS sponsor. Moving on to the recommendation of best practice, emphasis should be given to providing relevant and reliable information that is material to the ISIS investors in understanding and properly evaluating how the Sharia compliance investment are managed. It is recommended in addition the prospectus requirement as may be applicable to the ISIS in its jurisdiction. ISIS sponsor should ensure the disclosure of the following information in its prospectus. So firstly, information about the GP, including its size, membership selection process and qualification. Secondly, the senior management, basic ownership structure, organizational structure or ethics imposed upon the top level, employees of the ISIS, insiders as well as any applicable governance structure of policies. The ISIS policies are related to conflicts of interest, the financial administration of the ISIS, information about the Sharia governance system, and lastly, tenure of the system and events that may call for early retirement of the ISIS. Furthermore, the ISIS GB shall ensure appropriate disclosure in the offer documents so that the potential investors are provided with clear information. Sometimes, financial reporting and audit processes are carried out only at the level of ISIS sponsor or manager and not on the ISIS itself. Therefore, supervisory authorities should be especially careful to ensure that no form of ISIS escape the appropriate level of disclosure and scrutiny. Wherever possible, it is important to ensure that information is readily available in comparable, understandable, readable, and reliable form so that it is easily accessible not only by ISIS investors but by information intermediaries for consumers such as the media, financial analysts, and personal finance advisors. In most jurisdictions, even without specific financial laws, there will be liability for misleading or fraudulent statement. Therefore, the management of such potential risks should be carefully considered by the ISIS insiders whenever they are making any disclosure or are responsible for others who make such disclosure. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurhani Sufia binti Zulkifli and I am UDE 200090. Next, I will continue on regarding compliance with Sharia rules and principles. So, Principle 3 states that ICIS governing body shall ensure that appropriate system and mechanism for monitoring ex ante and ex post Sharia compliance are in place and effective. And among its recommended best practice are, there should be a portfolio screening process whereby the ICIS sponsor or investment manager consult the Sharia scholars on its SSB or an external Sharia advisory firm to ensure that the investment portfolio is Sharia compliant prior to the issuance of the ICIS share or unit certificates. And the actual role of the Sharia scholars may vary from one ICIS to another depending on the terms of reference of their appointments, such as firstly, the study of the offering memorandum, constitutional documents, and any major agreements controlling the relationship between the functionaries of the structure. Secondly, giving general advice to the ICIS sponsor or manager regarding compliance with Sharia. And thirdly, advising on the use of instruments and techniques for efficient cash management and their compliance with the principles of Sharia. And this presence of appropriate Sharia governance system would probably be more reassuring to investors and possibly more effective. The mechanism should also be made transparent to the potential investor in order to help them making an informed decision before participating in the ICIS. And ICIS should also put in place appropriate mechanism for removal of income and profit derived from such impermissible or ambiguous resources before distributing the purified profit to the investors. And last but not least, there should be established a close and reliable relationship between the governing body, the Sharia scholars, and the auditor or Sharia reviewers in order to help them to prepare such reports to the ICIS investors.
Assalamualaikum Sir Mustafa. I hope you have a great day. My name is Nur. I am binti Muhammad Syamirul Edinin and my matrix number is UDE 2076. I will be talking about the additional protection for Islamic collective investment schemes for investors. Principle 4.1, the ISIS governing body should ensure that any transfer of the ISIS funds or assets is carried out in accordance with the ISIS investors' goals and best interests and backed by reasonable and objective assessments. For the structure and process, given the industry's growing stage of advancement, it is critical for an ISIS governing body and supervisory authorities to take adequate safeguards to ensure that such actions are not carried out with manipulative or fraudulent purposes. In the case of Mudarabah and Wakalah investments, the ISIS manager may be tied to particular mandates and instructions. Moreover, adequate control and review should be practiced by other ISIS insiders such as Sharia Supervisory Board, custodian or trustee, and external auditor to protect ISIS investors from any fraudulent activity or negligent acts. One of the recommended best practices is if it is disclosed in the offering materials that any specific act or shuffling or shifting the ISIS funds or assets will be a feature of the fund, including any risks connected with it. Such transactions shall at least be 1. Carried out on an arm's length basis, 2. Notified to the GB and the Sharia Supervisory Board and shall advance only with their agreement, and number 3, disclosed on a regular basis, at least in the annual report. Next, reasonable care shall be enforced to guarantee that the valuer carried out his duties objectively. Furthermore, GB should also protect the integrity of asset valuations and calculation of net asset value that may be considered into the pricing of those share units by making sure the department handling out the valuation is not dominated by the department who handles the fund too. Lastly, the ISIS GB should seek confirmation that the valuation method is strong and delivers reliable findings. Moving on to Principle 4.2, ISIS insiders must be honest when imposing fees, establishing reserves, and smoothing dividend distributions. One of the recommended best practices is full, accurate, and timely information on fees and expenditures should be published in such a way that ISIS investors can make decisions about whether to invest in a fund and accept a certain level of cost. Moreover, if a performance fee is imposed, it should not provide a temptation for the ISIS manager to take unreasonable risks in order to increase its performance fee. In addition, the following elements should be clearly identified and reported to ISIS investors. Number 1, how the fund's performance will be evaluated. Number 2, what benchmark reference the performance will be compared. 3, the formula for the computation. Last but not least, ISIS insiders are recommended to set a cap on all sorts of fees so that ISIS investors are aware of the maximum fees. Finally, the ISIS GB should also develop practices and procedures that effectively recognize any undesirable uncertainty in such practice for proper transparency in the smoothing method. Thank you, that is all from me.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day to you, sir. My name is Aisha Putri binti Rahman, matrix number UDE 2007-8. So I will give a conclusion for our presentation today. So, in order to further strengthen the governance in the Islamic financial service industry, IFSI, and promote soundness and stability in the Islamic financial system, the IFSB Council, during its meeting in Jeddah in 2005, approved the members' proposal to develop the second tier of the IFSB governance standard. This is to focus on the collective investment scheme, CIS, that are claimed to be Sharia compliant. CIS have existed and implemented in some jurisdictions with various terms such as Islamic Unit Trust, Islamic Mutual Funds, or Islamic Investment Funds. The operation of CIS potentially involves conflict between the interests of those who invest in CIS, which is the CIS investor, and those who organize and operate the CIS, which are CIS insiders or CIS operators. So how can we define Islamic Collective Investment Scheme, ICIS? ICIS is defined as any financial scheme which fundamentally meets certain terms and conditions. What are the possible forms of ICIS? So there are 5 possible forms of ICIS that it may take. Number 1, open-ended funds. Number 2, closed-end funds. 3, a unit invest trust. 4, an individual fund or an umbrella fund. And finally, number 5, a profit-sharing investment account. Finally, what are the main guiding principles of IFSB 6? So the guiding principles of ICIS are divided into 4 parts. Number 1, general governance approach of ICIS. The ICIS highest governing body, GB, shall establish a comprehensive governance policy framework which protects the independence and integrity of each organ of governance and sets out mechanisms for proper control and management of conflict of interest and duty. Number 2, transparency in disclosure. ICIS insiders shall ensure that disclosure of material information is not only done with appropriate accuracy and timeliness, but also presented in an investor-friendly manner. Number 3, compliance with Sharia rules and principles. ICIS GB shall ensure that appropriate system and mechanisms for monitoring ex ante and ex post Sharia compliance are in place and are effective. And lastly, number 4, additional protection for ICIS investor. The ICIS GB shall ensure that any movement of the ICIS fund or assets to the extent that such is lawful will be carried out in conformity with the ICIS investors' objective and their best interest, and always supported by appropriate and objective valuations. Furthermore, ICIS insiders shall be transparent in the imposition of any fees, creation of any reserve, and the smoothing of any dividend payments. That's all from our group. Thank you, sir.